Happy Monday and good morning. I'm SunAh, and it is so good to be with you all today. You're listening to Let's Grab Coffee on WYXR 91.7 FM. Every Monday morning, I'm joined by experts from across the country who are investigating our most pressing social issues and common curiosities. Over the next hour, you'll learn about their inspirations, motivations, and of course, what they know about the world around us. So grab that cup of coffee and get ready for a fun and insightful conversation. Whether you have children in school or not, you have probably been swept up in conversations or news about K through 12 education. From online learning to masks in schools, critical race theory, what's happening in the classroom or not happening has dominated headlines over the past year and a half. Colleges, too, have had to make changes in instruction to accommodate health and safety needs. And today, we're going to dive deeper into how the shift to online instruction in K through 12 offers unique opportunities and challenges for educators, students, families, and education overall. Joining me this morning is Dr. Will Deyamport. He is a district instructional technologist for the Hattiesburg School District in Mississippi, serving grades K through 12. He is also a digital transformation strategist, writer, podcaster, and consultant. Prior to taking on a full-time instructional technology role, he was a social media strategist for a career development company. He is best known for his work in assisting educators in going digital and has helped schools leverage the power of technology to reimagine the learning experiences of their students. Good morning, Will. Welcome to the show.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Yes, it is so good to have you here with us this morning to talk about a topic that I feel like people probably hear a lot about and maybe even have strong feelings about, but I kind of feel like they probably don't know that much about. And so I'm so happy to have you with all of your wealth of knowledge join us here this morning and give us, the inside scoop and some clarity on these conversations around online learning. So let's just start with a little bit more about your background in online instruction.
All right. Well, I have experience definitely as a student. And for the past 9 years, I've been a district instructional technologist with Hattiesburg Public School District. And in the year second of my job, we received a grant for our district to roll out a digital initiative, which consisted of our secondary schools really becoming one-to-one digital classes, which meant that every class would have a cart of Chromebooks. And from there, we had to choose, a learning management system to make all of that happen. And we did so. And part of my job was teaching teachers, how do you teach online and how do you teach in a blended learning environment?
Mm-hmm. Yes. And I think it's so different, teaching face-to-face versus teaching online is not something that people can just automatically switch to overnight. So could you tell us maybe some of the ways you prepare teachers to do this online instruction?
Well, first of all, I tell them to keep it simple.
Mm-hmm.
And, a lot of times people get caught up in the shiny of what they're hearing. So if you are a teacher and let's say you get online, you get on Twitter, or you get on somewhere and you hear about stuff like Flipgrid, you hear about stuff like Seesaw, you hear all of these tools pop up. A lot of times people, ooh, like, squirrel. They get just chasing all of these things. And what I tell teachers is, let's keep it very simple. Mm-hmm. Let's start with what the district pays for. And once you're comfortable and you have your routine together and you know what you're doing, then we can add some additional things. But don't, just put everything on your plate, because like last year, the Bitmoji was just like everything. All the K through 12 teachers had it. And someone even came to me with it, and I said, don't worry about that right now. I'm not teaching y'all how to do that because we're going to keep this thing very, very simple. Always start with your standards or your learning objectives. Let that be the guide, not the tech. And understand that you have to chunk your material. And that just means that you have to create instruction in bite-sized pieces for your students to be able to digest them. Because whether you're in higher ed or you're in K through 12, the instructor is used to going from the time this thing starts to the time this thing ends. And you would have a lot of people just going, okay, all of my PDFs, all of my PowerPoints, I'm just going to throw them online. And, hey, I use it in face-to-face, just throw it online. And no, that is not what you want to do. You really want to chunk it. And again, turn it into smaller bite-sized pieces for students to be able to digest based upon that standard or learning objective you want to do. And you also want to be very engaging, meaning keeping your students involved, asking them questions, putting them in breakout rooms where they can collaborate together, having them do things and not just sit there and listen to you talk. And then you need to limit how much time you spend. Even though I don't care, university, and let's say your time is 1 hour and 15 minutes run time. Don't keep them people on a Zoom for 1 hour and 15 minutes, because folks are gonna be zoning out, and then sometimes they're gonna start looking at their phones, they're gonna do all kind of stuff. You want to keep it real tight. And then get them engaged and then get out. And the same thing with K through 12. I tell teachers all the time, if you have like really younger kids at the elementary level, 15 minutes. When you move in the secondary level, let's go 25, 30. Don't push that thing, because you're going to find that students are going to start to get that glazed over look. And at some point in time, as we have learned, and a lot of teachers got online, complained about it, they just stopped showing up. And of course, they're going to stop showing up because they have 6 to 8 classes. No one is going to spend an hour a day for 8 hours online. No one wants to do that. Not a college student, and for sure not some 10-year-old wants to do that as well. So you want to make sure, again, you make that instruction short, quality instruction based upon the standard, and then let your students go and do that independent work. And have office hours. You can yourself stay on a Zoom and have students, look, if you have any issues, have any questions, send me a message or hop on this Zoom at this time and we can work together. But don't get up there and do that, because as an adult, you don't want to do it. Right? I mean, let's be honest. When you work in education, all of us have these quote unquote PD days or these faculty meetings where you get together and do all those things. Most teachers don't want to have that meeting. So why would you subject your students to that meeting times 8 in an online environment where you're just going to talk most of the time? So that's the key, is just making sure that you're giving them the right instruction, but you're letting them go. Because I tell teachers all the time, if you're working harder than your students, then you're doing it wrong. Right? So your direct instruction is supposed to be the setup for them to do the independent work on their own, where you can provide guidance and feedback, not for you to lead the whole show.
I think that's so key, because I often think, sometimes folks have the idea that teachers are supposed to do all of the heavy lifting versus providing students with the tools so that they can actually apply the learning, kind of make mistakes even, but that helps them actually learn and digest the material. And I love this idea of, even having office hours during, the class time, so that students can, if they, they can work on the assignment there and they know you're there. So if they have a question, they can ask it, which I think is great. because as we know, we learn through doing.
Mhm.
And so but it's great to have that support there. So when we get stuck or like, wait a minute, I don't think this is how they explained it. I think I missed a step. We have someone there. But I think that's kind of a different way of thinking about it, because I think a lot of folks think the teacher is just supposed to be up there just talking, giving it their all for the entire course period. And that wouldn't happen in a classroom. And certainly, as you mentioned, not via Zoom either, because that Zoom fatigue is very real. Yes. Now, could you talk a little bit more about the differences in that face-to-face mode of instruction versus online? I mean, we kind of inherently talked about some of them, but I just want to give people a real feel for what educators have had to do over this year, with, in some cases, very little prior kind of training, or even, to be honest, prior desire to teach in that sort of format.
Yeah, these past 2 years have really been, for a lot of teachers, trying to put a Band-Aid on a boat that's sinking. Mm. And the good thing about that is, if there is a silver lining, is school districts got a lot of money. Mm-hmm. And with their money, they bought devices for students. They bought devices for classrooms. They bought Promethean panels that help with teaching. They bought learning management systems. A lot of school districts who could never afford that were able to do that. They were able to upgrade their internet. They were able to do all kinds of things to bring that school district into the 21st century, because some of them were not in that shape. So that was definitely, a blessing, a silver lining through all of this. When you're looking at the teaching face-to-face, what I try to tell teachers is let's keep that same framework, meaning if you teach in K through 12, you're familiar with something called gradual release, which simply means I do, we do, you do. So the teacher models, then the we do guided practice, we do this together, and then the you do your independent practice, you are on your own. And so I work with teachers, I do the same thing. So online, there's all kind of online models that you can Google. There's Dick, Carey, and Carey. Everyone has heard about the Ed.D model and those things. Now, to me, they're very complicated for a K through 12 space. So I keep it, let's work with the model we are familiar with, which is gradual release. So I walk them through saying, okay, now your gradual release, we're going to do this through Zoom if we're going to be in an online or in a hybrid environment. But what you're going to do is, again, we're going to do it this way. Then we're going to set up in our learning management system, we're going to have our bell ringer, which 2 or 3 questions, 5 to 7 minutes for students to do. Then we're going to go into our guided practice, which we're going to take our curriculum, which normally is a paper curriculum. But what we're going to do, we're going to use a tool called Cami, which allows students to type, annotate, underline, highlight that document, where students can then, again, they're working with the teacher. So as the teacher is at the Promethean panel and they're working, students are working with their teacher, and they're able to actually submit that work, and the teacher can go ahead and review and give them feedback. And then when we go to the independent practice, that's why I tell teachers, let's look at, well, the first thing I do is, it's all about just getting them to use it and repurpose our curriculum in a digital fashion, because most curriculum that school districts purchase wasn't designed for a digital world. So I show them, how do we make it engaging and how do we make it digital? But most of that will be DOK1, DOK2. So for those who are not familiar, that is just recall. That's just like if someone to ask you 5 times 5 and you say 25, right? Because that's how we learn, 5 times 5, 25. So we're talking about just basic recall. A lot of what's happening is going to be basic recall, like multiple choices, ready recall. What I'm trying to do at some point is, once we're comfortable, let's move to DLK3, DLK4. Now we're talking about synthesizing information. Now we're talking about applying the information. Now we're talking about creating things with these tools in order for students to prove and provide evidence of their understanding. So I'll give you an example. Dr. Walker taught biology, and she was covering biomes. Now, you would normally go to a classroom, you'll see kids walking down the hall with their shoe boxes where they've created a biome, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. But we have these digital tools now, which allow kids to become creative. Mm-hmm. And so she had her students use Adobe Spark to create a survivor video. Mm-hmm. So basically she said, okay, this is your biome. You are going to crash land in that biome, and I want you to create a video explaining to us what you're seeing and what you need to survive in that biome. Now, the kids still had to do the research on what is a tundra or what is a desert. Mm-hmm. But now they're using these tools to create that video, and they're making it more interesting, more engaging. And if we're looking at the SAMR model, now we're talking about redefinition on the higher end of what do we want kids to do with the technology. And it was awesome to see those videos because, one, I was like, okay, I don't know what I'm going to see here. I don't know what to expect. But to watch it, I'm like, wow, because it gave them greater ownership of their learning over a worksheet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's what we want. You know, I was having a conversation with my coach today, and I will, you know, as we were talking about this, and I was saying, you know, when you're that teacher and that student who's 18, 20, and they walk up to you at Walmart or Starbucks, and they say, hey, how you doing, Miss So-and-so? They're not doing that because you gave them a worksheet.
Right.
They're not doing that. Those kids who remember you like that and are excited to see you, they doing it because they either had a great relationship with you or your class was very exciting. They did stuff in your classroom. They had a great time doing things. They learned a lot in your classroom. And you don't get that from the worksheet, and you don't get that from the lecture. I mean, even in higher ed, where again, higher ed is built upon the lecture. When you have those professors who have those classes where kids have projects and they do things outside of the research paper, which again is the standard. Mm-hmm. Those kids take more from that class than they do because I wrote a paper.
Yeah.
And that's where, when I'm talking to teachers about how do we teach online and how do we use these tools, I know we're going to start here with the baby steps with just recall and remote memorization. Boom. DOK 1, DOK 2. But at some point, as we're looking at the SAMR, trying to go from substitution and augmentation to modification and redefinition, DOK 3, DOK 4, is how can your students use these tools to provide evidence, but do so in a way in which they're creating something. Mm-hmm. So your students can create a podcast, mm-hmm. right? Where they are like, I'm interviewing a historical figure. They're still doing the same research, the same reading, but how are they providing that evidence of understanding? So it's not them, I'm going to write this little essay, I'm going to write this paper, but they're gaining these real knowledge, real world skills with these tools. But again, they're doing in a very creative way. And as we're looking at the world of work in which we live in, as we've seen, those who can use these tools with their jobs still kept a job.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I'm loving that. You know, I got so excited when you were talking about that science project. I was like, oh, that's fun. And, you know, something you mentioned too, you know, if there is a silver lining, that silver lining of being school districts that maybe didn't have all the resources, now really it was a push and mandate to get them, you know, some sort of Chromebook or laptop for all their students, to make sure their students had access to Wi-Fi, to make, you know, all these different things that, you know, we can oftentimes take for granted, that everyone has access to Wi-Fi or everyone has a computer, and it's simply not true. We have a major digital divide in this country. And so absolutely bringing, you know, a lot of school districts up to what we think, you know, was already the standard, but actually bringing them up to it is definitely a silver lining. and having these assignments that are more creative. Like I got excited. I know the students are way more excited than I am. And I'm pretty excited just listening to you. But, having things that students actually enjoy doing. I know students hate writing the papers and hate writing the essays. And so just thinking about, creating a survivor video or, other creative ways to demonstrate your learning. I mean, even in the college level, I try not to give too many essays or long research papers for that reason, and at least give students the opportunity to, if they want to do a creative project, they can. But it's exciting to hear that in K through 12, that educators are giving students more creative opportunities, because oftentimes by the time students get to college, they have kind of been conditioned to write the paper and write the essay, that in many ways, when you say you can do whatever you would like to do, they kind of are like, well, I don't know what I like to do or how I would even do it. So it's exciting to know that, K through 12 educators are learning these different tools and tech, and that they get to share that with their students. So that's exciting.
Definitely. I mean, it gets me, giddy when I get to observe it, when I get to see it, or when a teacher, calls me in to see it. And some things that we've done, and we did this in our district before the pandemic, we were using these video conferencing tools to bring in experts into the classroom, right? So we had a teacher, the same teacher, Dr. Walker, she taught biology. Her brother was an admissions specialist at a medical school. And he came in and talked to her students about med school and talked to her students about the importance of, science and doing the work, and giving them sort of a real world experience of, this is why you do what you do in class, right? This is not, we're not here just to waste your time, but this is like a career option for them. And they were able to ask them questions, about medical school and how do you get in and those things. And then we had a culinary arts teacher who brought in a restaurateur and chef, and they prepared questions before the interview and gave it to him. And they were just, and again, I'm sitting here like, I don't know what they're going to give to this person. And so I'm going in and I'm seeing it, and they're asking them like, what are your favorite herbs to cook with? I said, oh my gosh, this is going to be kind of good. And and what do you look for in an employee?
Wow.
and just having them do that, and then having him say, I do this, and out of my 2 restaurants, we do this. I'm looking for this. I like to cook with this, and even talk about his life, because he was a scientist, and he was like, I'm kind of bored. I love cooking, and so he went to culinary arts school. So to talk about his journey and those things. So again, that learning they're taking by bringing in real world experts that can not only sort of tell them what's going on, but they can themselves ask a question and be able to look at the possibilities of how what they're learning actually has a direct correlation to the world of work or the world outside of them. Again, give students a different sort of motivation to do the work, as opposed to, why we got to do this? Because I said so.
Yeah. And it's nothing like having a guest speaker in class. Students get so tired of their instructor, even if they love them. It's just something about having that new face that students always get that extra energy for. So it's so great to be able to have guest speakers and, like you said, make those real world connections, because that's what makes learning exciting for students. Like you said, when they can actually apply it, whether it's kind of through the mode of learning or through actual things they're interested in. I love that. Well, let's take a quick break. You're listening to Let's Grab Coffee on WYXR 91.7 FM. I'm SunAh, and I'm here with Dr. Will Deyamport, and we are talking about online instruction and education and some of the opportunities that kind of this massive shift to online instruction has afforded, particularly K through 12 educators. Before the break, we were talking about ways that online instruction allowed educators to show students how they could take ownership over their learning through a lot of different creative ways. And I think that's so important. When students feel ownership over their learning, they're more invested, more motivated. And so that makes me really excited. Now, you've given me some great examples of some different things educators have been able to do now that we are in this online environment. And I'm wondering, has there been anything that kind of surprised you around online learning, whether even the creativity from some of your instructors or even the things that you were like, I can finally implement this and get educators on board with this, since we are definitely doing the online instruction?
I think what surprised me the most was just how much could be done with the right tool.
Yeah.
Right. So there were teachers who on Twitter, a lot of the sort of pushback was about sort of the hybrid high flex teaching, because you had students on different schedules, right? So for those schools who did not go completely virtual, to sort of navigate the spread of COVID, they said, okay, well, some of you will go to school on A days and some people go to school on B days. So essentially, they had kids joining on at Zoom at home, kids in the classroom, and they were having to teach at the same time. And for some teachers, like, this is driving me bonkers. But with the right tools, it's a lot easier to do. So I've even witnessed our own teachers, because you have, let's say we have Promethean panels. And so with the Promethean panel, the teacher could join the Zoom on the Promethean panel and share the screen. And what that would do is, whether they have a Schoology, a whiteboard, a website, a video, whatever was on their Promethean board that the kids saw in the classroom, the kids at home saw the same thing. So the teacher was delivering one lesson to the same group of kids. But what they had to do, and this was done, masterfully by Miss Patton, masterfully by Miss Cicely Jones, is you just have to teach and not get caught up in this is technology. And what I mean by that is, Miss Patton would say, okay, we're going to work on number 3. And so she would look at her laptop and say, Jamal, what are we going to be doing right here? The distributive property. Yes. And then in her classroom, go, Kim, what do we do with the distributive property? And so Kim would tell what we do with that step. Go back to the computer. And so she wasn't just like focusing on, let me look at this computer, make sure the kids are here. She was actually just teaching like she would normally teach. So she involved the kids at home into the classroom in school, and the kids in the classroom heard the kids at home.
Yeah.
So it was a one experience. And so I was like, yo, this is dope. And then she had an iPad. So she was walking around the room too. I was like, well, you go do that, Patton. And so the tools allowed her to just do it. And that's what really was like, oh my gosh, with the right tools, we can do almost anything. And that is what really I said, okay, now that I'm seeing this, we need to push this out to everybody in the district so that they themselves can get to that point. Because again, a lot of people were like, oh, I'm going to do this. I'm going to create this instruction for these students, and I'm going to do these. I'm like, no. Too much work. Yeah. We're going to create one, classroom instruction in Schoology, and everybody will join in. And some people are like, oh, I'm like, yeah, you feeling it right? And so that's what it was really awesome to see that sort of transpire the longer we went on, because again, people just trying to find their footing, because unfortunately, people went home and they had too much hope in their heart that August was going to be different, right? So that March, when everything shut down and people were scrambling, people went home, in their heart, we're going back to normal. So a lot of teachers mentally were not prepared, and they did not plan on how to teach online to get better. And this was all over the country.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at teachers going, now the numbers are higher now in July than they were when everything shut down in March. I think you need to be preparing to be teaching online. And then a lot of schools tried it, just like they did this year. A lot of schools said, hey, we're going to go back in person. And then the advisor said, ta-da, I'm still here. And then guess what? They had to go back home again, virtual or hybrid. And so this is where I was thinking, like, they should not have gone home in May with the thought of we're going back. Yeah. Go home, go home in May with the thought of how can I get better at this virtual thing, because I'm going to have to continue to do this. And even universities, some of them kind of, they had the whole same thing of we're going to bring everybody back, but then they guys, ooh, we're going to have to do some virtual stuff here, because I mean, they're college kids, just like high school kids or whatever. They're just going to do what they're going to do. They're going to be out, they're going to have a good time. Yeah. And you just can't do that because that affects your numbers. And so, you have to have those options available. And that's my thing of just sort of being prepared. As they say in the streets, if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready.
Okay.
and so that's one of the things I try to tell the teachers that I work with is always be prepared, always get ready. Even our superintendent right now is, in working with the teachers, is making sure that all of your instruction is in our learning management system. You're ready to go, because if we have to go virtual or hybrid, we don't want anyone scrambling and anyone panicking. We want to go. We've been doing this every day for weeks. We're good to go. Let's go.
Yeah, absolutely. You kind of took me back in my mind to last year. And, last summer, I was one of those, I'm going to be prepared, because I was not hopeful. I was realistic. I was like, I may not be, any disease expert or scientist, but I just don't think this virus is going to disappear over these next couple months. And so I definitely took the approach of I'll be prepared to deliver my course completely online, much better prepared than I was, in the spring, because I hadn't been teaching online. I had been fully in person. I know some folks had previous experience, with online learning, but I wasn't one of those professors. And so I wanted to deliver a course where students could be engaged, right? Where they could learn, but that it was also fun for me. I want to enjoy this time that we have together too. And the University of Memphis took a long time, of course, like most, institutions did, took a long time to say, okay, we are going to be online. And I said, y'all aren't going to stress me out. So kind of to your point of like, you have one kind of lesson and you're ready to deliver it, right, in whatever format. That was me, because I was like, I'm not going to sit here and make this whole online thing and then this whole face-to-face, right? So I also was taking that approach of, okay, how can I use the tools that I have to make the learning as engaging as possible in whatever format it may be. And even now, ready to flip back to, online if need be, even though we are, for right now in person. But I think the fun part is learning these different tools that allow you to do things that you can't do face-to-face. And importantly, allow you to engage students that you might not be able to engage as easily when you're in the classroom face to face. In some ways, the online setting makes it easier for students to participate, gives them a little more courage, and it's just more ways for them, I think, to participate online versus in person, which folks might be surprised to hear. But I found that it has been true. What about in the K through 12 setting? What kind of opportunities does online instruction bring that may not be available in face-to-face, or maybe just available differently in face-to-face?
I mean, just like you mentioned, some students don't want to raise their hands to say, I don't understand, right? Yeah. Or they don't want to raise their hands to share. But if you are using a Padlet, for example, where kids can use that sticky note to either ask a question or even share what they've learned today, or to answer the question, that's anonymous. No one knows who did that. And so they're able to participate and engage and collaborate with their classmates without putting themselves, out there in the open. Particularly, again, when someone says you understand or you're good, a lot of people are not going to raise their hand and say, no, I don't understand. Can you please repeat that? Yeah. But with these tools, there's a lot of ways, again, anonymously, for a student to say, I understood this, but you lost me here. Can you show us again? And so it's been a great way for students to be able to share their voice that way.
Yeah, definitely. I find that same thing, even having the opportunity to have people, drop something in the chat, or, respond 1, 2, 3, whatever, drop an emoji, anything. Students are much more, I guess, open to that. It feels less intimidating. Of course, no one wants to be the student that says, I don't get it, even though multiple students don't get it. That is pretty much guaranteed. If one student doesn't get it, multiple are lost, but no one wants to be the person who says, like, can you repeat that? Because they don't want to be looked at as, oh, you don't get it, or, all that, kind of teasing and things like that. So I definitely have enjoyed the online instruction in ways that I didn't even, think about or consider, because I just always thought, oh, I'll be teaching, in person, face to face. So it's definitely allowed me to expand my skill set as well. So that has been exciting. Now, for you and the teachers that you work with, are folks kind of on board now with online? Do they see the great tools and the great ways that they can connect, or are people still really championing that face-to-face as like the way to teach?
We still got some who, even when you're looking at Rogers, when he talks about in terms of change, Rogers says, hey, you're going to have that group of people who are going to be your leaders. They're going to be out front. You're going to have that middle group, and then you're going to have those who are going to be sitting there like, I don't know. And we still have that. And I think for me, what I am trying to do is to find opportunities for other teachers to lead. And we're doing that as a school district as well. So for example, we have something called Teacher Tech Thursday, in which every Thursday, a teacher from the district leads a webinar on how they are integrating technology into their classroom. And so other teachers can hop on, and we also record it and put it in our learning management system for teachers to go back and view it. But they get to hear from not me. They get to hear, because sometimes they see me as like, okay, but they get to hear from another teacher talking about stuff that I've talked about, but from their colleague, saying, oh, hey, this is how I implement this in my classroom. And even today, I had to do a training today on how do you organize your courses. And so there was a teacher, I had gone into her course and I said, oh, this is amazing. So I emailed the teacher, I said, hey, can you join me at this training? And she did. And she's a new teacher too, like fresh, brand new, just graduated in May teacher.
Wow.
But I loved how she organized her course and how she had her instruction in there. And so she connected her laptop to the projector, and the teachers who were in the training, they saw her course. It wasn't me talking again. It was her course. And she was talking them through about, okay, this is what it looks like. And I was explaining the difference of why her course may look differently than someone else's. I said, because she teaches self-contained. So which means she teaches all the subjects versus if you're a compartmentalized teacher, you're going to be teaching just only math or only science or only ELA. As I said, so her course is going to be organized a little differently. You see her folders right here, but everything was done so beautifully. And she was able to help other teachers. Because other teachers like, hey, Miss Wilson, can you come here and show me? And she was able to work with them too as well. And I kept going, teacher leader, teacher leader, teacher leader. And so I want other teachers to take the lead. I want teachers to be those leaders, to show their colleagues, to model for them, to answer those questions as well. And so is something that we've been working on, and something that I really want to do more of, is giving those teachers those opportunities to be those leaders, so they can become go-to people at their school, grade level, so that they see what is possible, right? Because they see what another colleague is doing. They're like, oh, they're doing it. They're having a great time. Their students are engaged. They're seeing results. Let me do what they're doing. It's one thing for me, because I mean, I'm coming in, I'm working with teachers, and then I roll out. But these are people they see every day. And so I'm really want to be in the process of, again, building up those teacher leaders that can be that voice, that example.
Yeah, it's kind of like what we talked about earlier, when you have those guest speakers, right? Just a new face. Like you said, they're saying the same things that you have said, but it's someone new. So they get to hear from someone else. But then importantly, in, that specific school, it's someone that they could actually go to if they have other questions. They can kind of see, oh, that's someone who they identify with as, my colleague here in this school, or maybe this grade, same grade, or whatever it may be. And they can see, okay, it really does work. It makes things more streamlined, or I can implement this, or use this other tech. And so it becomes a little more concrete, because educators, we learn too. Our learning does not stop. So it's good to have that support again, so we can go to someone and say, I need help, I want to do this, but I just don't know how. Let's take another break. This is Let's Grab Coffee on WYXR 91.7 FM. I'm SunAh. You're listening to Let's Grab Coffee on WYXR 91.7 FM. And today I'm chatting with Dr. Will Deyamport. And we've been talking about online learning and all the great opportunities that this, big, massive, quick shift to online learning has brought. I think we hear so much negativity around online instruction. So it's so good to hear the positives that have come, out of this, very unusual set of circumstances. But it does kind of seem like people either really love the online instruction, or they really hate it. Do you have any idea why that's the case? Because people feel very strongly about it. Even folks who really have never experienced it, but people have some sort of idea about online instruction. Do you have any idea, why this love-hate or such strong feelings?
I think it has something to do with people's sort of reference point of it. Some people, what they know is face-to-face. What they're comfortable with is face-to-face. And the whole idea of being online can seem impersonal. Can seem, for some even call it, less quality. But you can have low quality in a face-to-face environment as well. And I also think it's, again, what do people sort of constitutes a worldview? So if I may go off on a tangent, for example, you have some people who say, I will never do online dating because that's not how you date. You go meet somebody at a bar, you go meet somebody at work, you go meet somebody at a book club or something. It has to be a face-to-face type initial situation. But you got other folks, they're on their phone and they're doing it, just like they're watching Netflix. They're like, just such a part of their life of, hey, I can meet somebody here. I mean, folks have gotten married from eHarmony and all those things. So I think it really depends on, again, how comfortable you are with technology, your worldview of what is and what isn't, and do you adapt to things? Like, are you one of those people who are like, I've done this forever and I'm going to die doing this? Or are you one of those people who are like, hey, I'm cool. What's next? Well, how can I do this? Now, I'm all in on online learning. I love it, but I do understand that it is not for everyone. If you are lazy, online learning is never for you. Now, you can use parts of it in terms of a blended learning environment, meaning you're in a class, when in a traditional classroom, the teacher's there, and for certain segments of instruction or remediation or assessment, the teacher can put you on a computer program or software, how you do something. But you're under the guise and supervision of a classroom teacher in a face-to-face environment. If you cannot handle being self-directed, right, you're going to get in some troubles in an online environment because you have to show up on time for the Zoom, and you have to do the work when you're not on Zoom and turn it in. And so it's not for everybody. Even as an adult, if you can't self-regulate very well as an adult at the university level, that online class is going to be a problem for you, right? So it's not for everyone. And even though that I'm all in on this, my philosophy is I am for whatever works best for the student. Yeah. And if the student will excel in a face-to-face environment, you go there, you do that. But if the online environment is what allows them to shine and be their best, then I want them to have an online option.
Absolutely. I love that student-centered approach, that we can have a range of tools that will allow us to meet our students where they are, but support them in the type of learning that is going to be best for them, and not, as educators, be stuck in a, one size fits all type of approach. I think that's so important. You mentioned, sometimes people think, well, this is how I did it. This is how it should be done, or this is how it's quote unquote always been done. So, why should we change? But we have all these different tools at our disposal. Why not use them and use them to the best of our ability? And I think some of the reasons that you mentioned why people are kind of against or skeptical about online instruction, because they think it's impersonal or that it's low quality, through our conversation, I think hopefully folks have, seen that that's not true, that online instruction is very personal. It can actually be even more tailored to students and a diverse group of student needs, and can be very much high quality. It's just a different mode of instruction that folks might not be used to, but we have to kind of get out of that nostalgia sometimes for, this, how this used to be, and, it was so great. Because, sometimes it wasn't that great. It was just what we, were used to. It was just the norm. And so this is an opportunity to create, a new norm. And thinking about that, we do have an opportunity right now with, all these different changes and disruptions to reimagine education, to institute, what might be the new norm. Is there anything that you wish that we were doing in this time to really make some exciting changes to education or to, instruction?
Yes, I would like for us to become, as you said earlier, more student-centered, more personalized learning, more options for students. So you can have you could have a kid in the third grade who is reading at a fifth grade reading level, but still, when it comes to, let's say, math, they're still at a third grade level. Now, normally what happen a lot of times, that kid's just going to be bored in their ELA class.
Yeah.
Right. Because that teacher could accelerate that student, but more often than not, they're not going to do so to the benefit of that student. But when you have, let's say, an online option where that kid could actually join a fifth grade ELA class, right, that could meet them where they are and accelerate them, awesome. A way to do away from grade levels, which, by the way, people, a lot of these grade levels are just set up because by age. Let's be real. No wonder one grade level, all number 10th graders in there, right? So they set it up that way. And to be able to erase those boundaries of not whether it's an age level, but where are you intellectually? Where is your curiosity level? Where can your ability to actually do the work? So I would love to be able to do that, as well as, again, we have school districts, whether they're urban or rural, where they may not have access to an AP teacher at that school, but via online, they could possibly join an AP class at another school district in a neighboring state or even in the same city. So allowing students to have that access that they may not be able to have in their school, to me, is another option of having students be able to have that flexibility, as well as, let's say you're a student who you have to work to help put food on the table for your family. If it could be set up to where you could physically face-to-face go to class maybe 3 days a week, work 2 days, but have that online component where you can get your classes where you could still keep up with your learning, that would be awesome. Or if you're a student who you're like, wow, I have a child I need to take care of. So instead of them, possibly dropping out, having options to where, or have, some schools have night schools. So I'm in Mississippi. I don't know of any night school programs that we have, but having an opportunity for that student to possibly, again, provide the care maybe in the daytime, and then at night where maybe they have a parent or some help, they can actually go to school at night online or what have you. I think, again, having different models, having the flexibility, having just various options to the way kids can learn the way they need to learn, how they need to learn, I think would be awesome. Because what I love about online learning, it's anywhere, anytime, any place, any device. And I think that should be our approach to education.
I love that. I mean, when I was just listening to you, what came to mind was having this opportunity right now to really, redefine these boundaries, these arbitrary boundaries, and, do away with them, redefine them, or just rethink kind of grade levels and how we're evaluating students, and really creating new opportunities for students. And that makes me excited because I think oftentimes education can get a little rigid when we're really committed to some of these older kind of standards, or again, oh, this is the way we've always done it, so therefore we'll continue to do it, even if it's not really helpful, even if it's not responsive to kind of student needs or student interest in the present moment. So I'm really excited about the possible new opportunities or new ways that we can think about education for our students. I think about it in the same way, like now that everyone has been used to being, on Zoom, it's not out of the ordinary to have a guest speaker via Zoom. Whereas typically we would have thought, oh, guest speakers have to be in person, or, it's not unusual to connect just with someone and network via Zoom versus, again, having to wait until you might run across someone in person or go to a conference or, whatever the case may be. So in some ways, there are definitely, a lot of opportunities if we are willing, to take them and potentially even ruffle some feathers in the process. Dr. Will, I know we are about at the end of our time this morning, but I wanted to give you an opportunity to say any closing thoughts or even anything you're hopeful about as we, finish out this school year. Seems like there's so much farther to go.
It is. I was commenting on a teacher today as I was walking in to do my session after school, was like, I can't believe it's only September because of all of the work that we've been doing. I'm hopeful that we really do take this opportunity to reimagine what is possible. Mm-hmm. I'm 47 years old. I grew up with, once video became, I guess, what it is, because I was born before video was at people's homes. But when video became sort of the mainstream, and then you would have these like mom and pop shows pop up, but then Blockbuster came and people were so excited. I was like, oh man, let's have a Blockbuster night. And when Netflix came and streaming became possible, and now we have streaming everywhere, that has not only changed how people view content and interact with content, but now you're having platforms like Disney Plus, like Hulu, like Netflix, creating original programming for new creatives and new artists and new actors. And so they're just providing another platform for new art to be created and delivered. And when I see that, I'm looking at education and I'm going, why can't we again reimagine what the purpose of school is for and how we can use all the tools as our disposal to create the type of school system, learning environment that kids wake up in the morning and they're excited for school, where they're not like, oh my gosh, I cannot wait till I drop out. But really going like, oh, this is amazing, man. I get to study this. I get to do that in my classroom. We're creating videos. One of my teachers, we have to create a YouTube channel, man. I'm excited about that. I'm hoping that we take this time to really sit back and just push the envelope and just not get caught up in what has been, but what could be.
Yes, absolutely. I love that. Well, Dr. Will Deyamport, thank you so much for joining us this morning. I have learned so much from you today, and I know our listeners have as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. SunAh. I appreciate it.
This has been Let's Grab Coffee on WYXR 91.7 FM. I know I learned so much from our conversation this morning and really got me excited about thinking about new tools to use in my classroom. And I hope for folks who maybe have been skeptical about online instruction, that this eased some of your fears and got you excited too about online learning. The great thing about online instruction is that you really have the opportunity to learn anything you want. There's so many online courses available for folks to take for free, so that you can really, pique some of your own interests and kind of explore topics that maybe you didn't have a chance to do so formally. So for today's positive note, I just wanted to leave you with this quote that says, education is not a problem. Education is an opportunity. And I think that's really what we talked about today, this great opportunity that we have right now to reimagine education, to reimagine the type of instruction that's happening, not just through K through 12, but also on the college level as well. Well, this is Let's Grab Coffee on WYXR 91.7 FM. I'm SunAh, and every Monday morning you can join me here. I can't wait to have you back next Monday morning.